Wildstar, the MMO that burned too bright. I played this game once.
For as long as the genre has existed, the MMORPG market has been full of cutthroat competition. But through it all, one thing has remained constant: World of Warcraft.
No fucking way. There he is. Just a random video showing tips out, absolutely destroying some kid.
World
That
of
is so
Warcraft.
funny to me.
Of course, these days, the story is much different. But back then,
Yeah.
competing with World of Warcraft was all that mattered. While every now and then, a new MMORPG is touted as the next quote-unquote WoW killer, none have been able to actually get the job done.
Well, there was one that got the job done. It was called WoW.
In 2014, there was one game that many considered a serious contender to actually dethrone the king. And though it had all the makings of a great game, it never managed to live up to the hype. This is Wildstar.
I heard that Wildstar was a good game. The main problem that it had was the end game had a bunch of like annoying attunements that nobody wanted to do. And then like people just stopped playing it because of that.
Wildstar was an
And
MMORPG
this got
created
shut
by
down,
Carbine
by the way.
Studios, a company founded in 2005 by 17 former members of the original World of Warcraft development team. The game began production that same year, but was only announced to the public in 2007 as an unnamed MMO
NCSoft, they're the ones that are making Throne and Liberty now.
project. Later that same year, Carbine was acquired by NCSoft, a South Korean company known for its distribution of MMO series like Guild Wars and Lineage. While this was key in potentially helping the game reach a wider audience, it may have done more harm than good, as later on, some anonymous Carbine Studio employees revealed that the production supervisors imposed their vision of the game on the developers and drastically changed the product from what they may have once intended. Despite these issues, the game officially released on June 3rd, 2014.
I remember the day that this came out. This was like during, I think, I'm pretty sure it was during WOD. And I remember I would watch Twitch and I saw Tally streaming Wildstar. I saw Tally streaming Wildstar all those years ago. And I watched a little bit of it and I was like, this sucks. I never played it.
Mostly positive reviews, and a decent starting player base of around 450,000 players, and in the process, earned $28 million in revenue.
Wow.
The strategy of many MMORPGs at the time was to try and replicate the success of World of Warcraft by making games that were similar. You have a formula that works, why try and change it? Wildstar didn't take this route, and that's one of the reasons.
Well, that was their marketing, is that they were... Wildstar was supposed to be the MMO for hardcore WoW players because WoW has gotten too easy. But they didn't realize that, like, WoW was popular because it was easy. Because, as I said, man, it's not a surprise that Hardcore Classic popped off as soon as Old War came out. Most people that play video games are fucking garbage at them.
That many had high expectations for it. As Jeremy Gaffney, the executive producer and design director for the game, said in a Reddit AMA, quote, "We just crunched for 6 years. We want to do anything but WoW. But at the end of the day, we do what is fun. We're not trying to be different for difference's sake."
There it is.
This was a message that remained true for many aspects of Wildstar,
smart.
starting with the engine that the game was going to use. While most game developers will stick with the popular ones like Unity and Unreal Engine, Carbine decided to go against the grain and make their own, simply
That's a
titled
lot.
Engine. Obviously, this was incredibly ambitious for the first game of a brand new studio,
Yeah.
but Steve Moret, the lead software engineer of Carbine, felt that the whole team was both prepared and excited for the challenges, saying, quote,
Well, I know whenever New World did this, there were no problems at all.
Back in 2005, we knew we had a few years of R&D time, so we evaluated a few off-the-shelf engines, and while these engines would let us show off some fancy graphics in year one, they didn't look like they'd scale to our needs 5+ years later. We decided to spend a majority of our work
I mean, the style of the game, I think actually it aged pretty well. Whenever you look at a lot of the assets and everything, it didn't look that bad.
homebrewing the correct solution for each problem.
Look at
It
that.
was
That looks
obvious to
pretty
me
good.
from day one that the entire team already knew what we were signing up for. In fact, most were excited and overjoyed to try and start over. This time, not making the same mistakes that might have been made before. This was the foundation for the cartoony, stylized, sci-fi themed MMO focused around the idea of allowing players to experience the game in a very individualistic manner. This was done through an additional leveling system called paths. When creating a character, players would choose one of 4 paths: soldier, explorer, scientist, and settler. These paths were based on the Bartle player types, which is kind of like a political compass, but for gamers. The paths unlocked extra content catered to the style the player chooses, giving unique bonuses and rewards in the process.
Oh, I see. That makes sense. Yeah, for casuals and hardcore players, PvPers, yeah, it makes sense.
Although it may have been a good idea on paper, the system wasn't quite fully developed on launch, and felt sluggish, especially when combined with the game's slow leveling system. While this particular mechanic was pretty underwhelming, the combat system had the opposite effect. One of the main highlighted and significantly advertised features was Wildstar's telegraphing combat system.
Yeah, you can actually see what the fuck happens.
Typical MMOs use what is called tab target. World of Warcraft is a perfect example of this, where most of your attacks automatically go to the enemy and you don't really need to aim it at all. It's been a regular part of MMOs for quite some time, and allows those who are less mechanically gifted or don't have very good internet connections the opportunity to participate in combat. Wildstar was coming into a different world than World of Warcraft, and most serious gamers had a pretty good internet connection. With this in mind, they decided to create a combat system where attacks needed to be aimed manually. Attacks and heals would telegraph with zones being displayed.
I feel like having to aim every single attack like in New World is exhausting. I just think it is. I think it's just fucking exhausting. Like, I have no problem having to aim skills, but having to aim auto attacks is like, oh, fuck, man. Like, we're gonna be playing this for like 1,000 hours? I gotta aim every fucking auto attack? Oh my god. It's more engaging? I mean, then why do every game that does it doesn't work out? Like I feel like it sucked in New World. I don't know, man. Like, Final Fantasy has auto attacks. WoW has auto attacks. Fuck.
On the ground, allowing players to move into the zone or dash out before they impacted. Auto-targeting was included as well, but a well-placed free targeting attack would always catch more enemies. The combat system was paired with a very free-flowing, fluid movement system that allowed players to double jump, sprint, and dash all over the place.
I feel like every game, it's mandatory for every video game from now on to have double jump.
This movement system was a core component of Wildstar's gameplay, and was used for jumping puzzles, speed races, and extensively in combat to evade attacks and reposition. While the combat and movement system was praised and worked well for raids and general PvE combat, it sometimes led to a comically chaotic PvP experience.
Man, what is a moody mask?
See, while combat telegraphs help players to see incoming projectiles and attacks, in larger PvP battles, there are so many projectiles flying around that combat telegraphs tended to meld into one giant red circle, with players helplessly flailing around, trying to dodge damage. But that's not to say that the PvP was bad. In terms of game modes, you had traditional 2v2, 3v3, 5v5, and 15v15 battles.
I'm gonna be honest, every time somebody says that, like, they're making a game that's PvE focused, and they don't even give a fuck about PvP at all, it makes me excited for that game. Because I feel like there's almost never games that are not PvP focused that have fun PvP. Like, I'm gonna be honest, like, nobody gives a fuck about PvP in MMOs. The only reason why people cared about it is because back in the day, there was nothing else, no other way to express, you know, like, third person, like, movement in the same way. And then MOBAs came out, and PvP for MMOs, I think, became kind of irrelevant.
But the game's main attraction for PvP was a mode called Warplot. Warplot was a large-scale 40 versus 40 battle that had players battling on plots of land customized by the players themselves. This customization meant that every battlefield was different, leading to a new experience every time you jumped into a new game. While Warplot was an interesting PvP game mode, one of its main issues was the difficulty of getting 80 players to queue up at the same time, something that became increasingly problematic as the player base continued to shrink. While PvP may have been a mixed bag, the game's housing system is remembered fondly. Players could own plots of land in the sky and customize everything from the ground to the decor to the background music. On their plot, players were free to build as they wished and could invite other players to go to their houses. Gameplay features were also included in your sky plot, including things like crafting benches, personal dungeons, and portals to raids. To many players, This was one of the best parts of the game, and resulted in...
Yeah, that's really impressive. I think that, I mean, especially for a game that came out literally, like, what, almost 10 years ago? Like, that's insane.
Some incredible builds, like this skate park designed for the game's hoverboard mount.
That's insane.
PvP and player housing may have had its fans, but the main attraction to Wildstar was its endgame raiding content. Incidentally, only one of the few endgame attractions that the game had to offer. Large-scale raids are commonly viewed as a valuable feature that most, if not all, MMOs just have to have.
Yeah.
However, the amount of coordination, preparation, and sheer number of people that raids require makes the whole ordeal incredibly taxing.
Well, it's hard. I mean, like, that's really what it is. Like, doing raids like that is fucking hard. Like, so let's look at this boss, Chromagus. Alright, guys. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna hit him. And then, okay. Basically, I'm gonna call out to get behind the wall. And then you get behind the wall. Okay, we following? Alright, good. Okay, so then after you get behind the wall, then you get out from behind the wall, then you keep hitting them again. That's it. And then, oh, fucking 5 people are dead. They're all dead. So there it is. That's the reason why these big raids worked. It's because they were a joke, and anybody could do them. You can't put 40 dipshits together and do anything.
Incredibly taxing, but as a result, made it feel very rewarding as well.
Yeah.
Wildstar was developed to appeal specifically to this hardcore grind and payoff, and in retrospect, many speculate that this was ultimately a mistake. As players reached the level 50 cap, through an arduous questing slog that many criticized as being too long, it became quickly apparent that there was a lack of general endgame content. While hardcore PvE raiding is thought of as the main endgame feature to MMOs, that seemed to be all Carbine was focused on developing. However, even if you were one of those incredibly dedicated players that itemized correctly, got all the necessary buffs, and coordinated with 19 or 39 other players to do a raid.
Bro, imagine being colorblind. Oh, man.
To do a raid, all of you were met with some incredibly difficult encounters. Wildstar's raids were praised for being creative and utilizing the fluidity of movement and the game's telegraph combat system. Cool. The raids were also panned for being very punishing of mistakes, causing exhaustion and suffering from having their difficulty repeatedly increased to try and appeal to the top % of endgame players.
So Wildstar died, and then WoW was like, that sounds like a good idea, let's do that!
Most of which reportedly did not enjoy barely making it through the 12 boss encounters on a weekly timer. The mechanics of the bosses may have been creative, but only a small number of players even had the chance to try the content due to the high in-game requirements and players needed.
Well, like, my understanding of this, right, was that the reason why the raids fell off wasn't even because of their difficulty, it was because getting into the raid required an attunement process that was incredibly boring, and it took too long. Like, that was my understanding. It wasn't even the quality of the raids or the difficulty of them. It was like people couldn't get into the fucking raids.
With the endgame aside, Wildstar also had some more typical issues that most MMORPGs deal with. Server issues
like original WoW. Every time that somebody makes that comment, it reminds me that they didn't play original WoW. Alright, so you want to get into the Molten Core? Alright, and what you gotta do? So basically, you go into the level 50 dungeon and you click on a rock. Then come back to me. Alright. You're attuned. Good job. Jump through the window. And then here's BWL. Oh, you killed the guy. You got the item? Okay, go kill the other guy. Alright, you're attuned now. Here's Nax attunement. Hey, do you have any money? Oh, you do? Great! Welcome to Nax! What the fuck are y'all talking about that it was hard? What the fuck do you mean? Onyxia was the only bad one? Onyxia was a cock. You're right. You're right about Onyxia.
caused high player count modes like Warplot and Raids to be unplayable, and a variety of bugs, likely due to being run on a new engine, also made it incredibly difficult for players to even get the game running. From the get-go, Wildstar's player base was on a quick and steady decline. Perhaps too little too late, decisions were made in order to try and keep the game afloat. Wildstar became free to play a year after its release. And
it's also like back then, you got to keep in mind too that like WoW was still like, it was still like not the worst game that's ever been made. People were still happy about WoW. Like there was still like that naive expectation that things were going to get better. And to be fair, Legion was pretty good, right? After this.
Began combining servers to keep worlds populated with the diminishing player base. However, the game was simply unable to keep going, and on September 6th, 2018, it was announced that not only were Wildstar's servers being shut down, but Carbine Studios was closing as well. Wildstar is remembered fondly and as a valuable case study in what an MMO needs to succeed. While serious players insist—
Nah, it wasn't remembered fondly. Like, I fucking hate this shit. It's like whenever a rapper dies and everybody says, I used to listen to their music. No, you fucking didn't. Like, no, it was not remembered fondly. Like, nobody liked this game. This game was dead. That's why they shut it down. They shut the game down because it was dead. Nobody played it. Everybody thought it was garbage. That's why. It's not like everybody. What do y'all think? Like, there's like, man, there's so many people playing this game. Oh, let's shut it down. Nah, man, they shut it down because nobody fucking played it.
that endgame raiding content is the main appeal of an MMO game, the large casual masses need more to stay around and keep playing. Yeah. Wildstar ended up...
And also, most people that like to pretend like they're hardcore raiders are hardcore classic World of Warcraft raiders. It's a bit different.
Executing its vision pretty well, having some great ideas with its combat.
For me, right? Like, in Legion, I remember fucking Tomb of Sargeras. I quit raiding. I said, fuck this. There's too much shit going on. I'm spending all my time raiding. I'm not streaming. Well, I was streaming the raids. That didn't go well. And, like, I'm not getting anything out of this. Like, what the fuck am I doing with my time? Like, raiding all of the time, doing this boss just so somebody can do the line wrong again. I remember it was Mistress Shazreen, whatever the fuck her name was. And I just quit I quit raiding right there. I said, I'm out.
That system, PvE encounters, and player housing, but unfortunately, some decisions like the game's difficulty and the slow grind to level up had players losing interest pretty quick.
That's the thing, is like the slow grind to level up. Like, it's again, developers that, like, this is the same thing that happens with Dark Souls, right? Is like, you have these Dark Soul clone games, and they don't really, they're bad games. But because it's like, oh, this is like Dark Souls, like, oh, well, it's challenging like Dark Souls, like, they don't understand the, this is probably like, sounds like a simp way to say it. They don't understand the genius behind a game like Dark Souls or World of Warcraft. They only see, like, the very, very narrow view of, it's good because it's hard, or it's rewarding because it's long. But they don't actually see what the substance of that is. They just see like a cause and effect.
Today, private servers for the game are in development by dedicated individuals, but for the most part, the game is largely forgotten. Wildstar may have had some serious potential to live up to the hype of being the WoW killer, and bits and pieces of it can be seen in some popular WoW killers of today. But this Wildstar ultimately burned too bright and too fast.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Wildstar? Did you ever give it a try when it was out? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
This is a good video. This is a real good one. I like this.
This video is made possible thanks to our wonderful patrons. Massive thank you to everyone on this list, and shout out to Jason, B, Brendan, QB, Foxy, Mauve, Pachanas, Sierra, Shampoo, Weeaboo, Spartacus, and Yashichi for being platinum supporters, and an extra special shout out to Steven, Noodles, and Marco for being diamond supporters. I'd like to personally wish you guys a very happy holidays. Check us out on Instagram, link in the description. If you want to support our channel and get info on unreleased videos, check out our Patreon. If you want to help us out in a different way, leaving a like, subscribing, and hitting the bell to stay up to date is also appreciated. My name is Jonah. Thanks for watching.
Bro, this is depressing. The recommended video is Wayfinder: The Return of Wildstar. Damn. Ain't that some shit, huh? Ain't that some motherfucking shit? God damn. All right. Well, I'll link y'all the video again. This is pretty good, man. Personally, I don't like this sci-fi shit. I'm not a fan. I like the actual fantasy gameplay of like swords, shields, magic, and dragons. I'm not about the sci-fi shit. So, Wildstar never really appealed to me. Now, it's not like I hate it. I mean, fuck. Of course I appreciate something like Star Wars or Warhammer 40K, right? Yeah, of course. But it's just that if I had to pick, I like the medieval shit more. So I'm not hyped for Starfield. I'm gonna try it out. Yeah, I'm gonna try it out. I'm gonna see what it's like, man. But yeah, anyway, Wildstar is one of those other games, right? Is like they try to, and it's like also it's a game that's
or
made.
39.
It's made in a way like, oh well, this is not like World of Warcraft. This is different than World of Warcraft. Like, there's a reason why people play World of Warcraft. It's because it's a good fucking game. Like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to change everything. It's so crazy, and it's like I always think that things that are made in spite of something else usually don't have a lifespan, because the whole existence of it is predicated off of not liking something else. And I just think that that type of a culture doesn't last very long. That's what I think. Rift tried to do that? Yeah, and where are they now? They're in the dirt. Nobody gives a fuck about Rift. And that's just a fact. You need to change everything? You keep it boring from this? No, you don't need to change everything. Like, you only need to change a few things, and then if you change a few things, that will make it good enough and interesting enough to where, like, it feels like you changed everything. That's the difference.